On the 15th of September 2025, 16:18 local time, a Venezuelan patrol craft made a decision that could have triggered a crisis. It peeled hard to port and steamed directly at a U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyer operating legally in international waters. What followed was not fireworks or missile, it was a lesson in patience, professional rules of engagement, and the quiet power of presence. This is the story of how a tense maritime gamble was defused without a shot being fired, and why every second, every radio call, and every camera clip mattered. At 16:11, lookouts aboard the USS Knights picked up an approaching contact on Spy 1D radar. A Getty-class Venezuelan patrol ship later tracked as Track Sierra 179 moving at an unusual pace. Over the next 2 minutes, its speed rose from a routine 12 knots to a fast 22 knots. Course plotted, a direct intercept toward Knight's starboard bow. The Combat Information Center, CIC, flagged it for hostile intent and began logging everything. Timestamps, bearings, emissions, and imagery. The first hail went out in English. Silence. A second hail in Spanish got no reply. Bridge-to-bridge protocols were observed, broadcast, and recorded. The destroyer's captain ordered a calibrated escalation of presence. SLQ-32 electronic surveillance warmed up. Long-range optics and FLIR zoomed in. The 5-inch gun rotated visibly but remained unmanned, and a Seahawk helicopter was readied for a non-lethal show of presence. The message from the Knights was precise: maintain international law, record every move, and de-escalate if possible. By 1622, the Venezuelan vessel pressed speed again, now 26 knots closing to a CPA, closest point of approach, under 3 miles. The Seahawk lifted, ran in orbit, and used its MX-20 FLIR and EO sensors to capture high-resolution, geotagged, time-stamped videos and thermal signatures. A laser designator, a non-lethal, attention-getting laser, painted the Venezuelan bridge with a clear message. You are being seen. The Knights repeated lawful hails and documented the lack of response. The standoff ran for 8 minutes like this. Engines, optics, voices, sensors, until the Venezuelan vessel finally eased off, dropping speed and altering course. By 1638, the immediate danger had passed. No shots, no injuries. But everything had been recorded. Tactics, doctrine, and restraint. Why the U.S. acted the way it did. This was textbook modern maritime diplomacy. Presence instead of provocation. The U.S. response followed 4 guiding principles: clarity of intent, warn first, record everything, and demonstrate capability visibly without resorting to lethal force. The 5-inch gun's slow swing and the Seahawk's orbit were deliberate signals. We see you, we are ready, but we will not be the first to shoot. Legal posture: the destroyer remained within international waters and adhered to navigation law. Every recording was legal evidence. Radio transcripts, time-stamped EO/IR footage, and radar logs, essential for any diplomatic or legal aftermath. Proportionality and escalation control: the crew escalated in increments. Hale's non-lethal laser/designator airborne presence continued logging. Each step offered the other side an exit ramp and minimized risk of miscalculation. Information advantage: the Seahawk's MX-20 pod provided the legal and factual narrative. In modern maritime incidents, the camera is sometimes the most decisive weapon. It creates an immutable record for Washington, Caracas, and international forums. This combination, measured pressure backed by high-quality sensing and legal documentation, turned a potential use-of-force moment into a controlled political signal. Why Venezuela might have done it: this encounter didn't happen in a vacuum. In the weeks before 15 September, U.S. Southern Command had publicly confirmed kinetic action against smuggling vessels in the Caribbean. Washington's strikes, combined with increased U.S. ISR presence, pushed Caracas to send patrols farther offshore and to adopt posturing maneuvers. The Venezuelan Navy's playbook is asymmetric. It lacks parity with U.S. firepower, but can create friction, produce headlines, and force U.S. political leaders to weigh options. Close passes, provocative overflights, and data collection missions are ways for a smaller navy to push back without opening a full shooting match. For Venezuela, the intercept sent a message to domestic and regional audiences. We can contest presence. For the U.S., the test was whether presence and lawfulness could be maintained without escalation. The Knights crew answered with discipline, not aggression. The human factor moments like this are won or lost in the bridge team's calmness. Consider the human timeline. Seconds to decisions under a convergence of sensor streams, anxious political backstops, and the risk of misinterpreting a single movement. The Knights crew rehearsed this in training. Keep the record clean, stick to ROE, and avoid reflexive escalation. The Seahawk pilots and CIC watchstanders functioned as the ship's eyes for truth. Their footage would stand up at hearings, briefings, or courts. On the Venezuelan side, bridge gestures, hand waves, and delayed radio replies suggested that the maneuver might have been aggressive theater rather than intent to fire. Still, the risk was real. A single misread could have produced catastrophe. Aftermath. What this encounter produced tactically, the incident ended with the Venezuelan vessel turning away and no physical confrontation. Strategically, several effects rippled outward. Documented evidence. The U.S. preserved a forensic record of every action, the most valuable currency in diplomatic disputes in UN or OAS debates. Domestic signaling. Washington demonstrated restraint backed by capability. Caracas showed willingness to take risks for political messaging. Regional alarm. Neighbors and shipping interests watched closely. A misstep in the Caribbean can have economic and political consequences. Intelligence reporting and interagency debriefs followed immediately. The logs would be reviewed in Washington, Caracas, and allied capitals. Naval lessons learned were filed: when to show presence, how to balance visibility and restraint, and why legal recording is part of maritime posture. Strategic implications. Why this matters beyond a single encounter. Modern power projection is no longer just about firepower. In today's world, sensors, intelligence, and international law play just as important a role as missiles and warships. This incident shows that having the biggest guns is not enough when confrontations take place in politically sensitive waters. Credible evidence, careful restraint, and the ability to document every move can shape outcomes far more effectively than a hasty show of force. It's about proving legitimacy and control in an environment where the world is always watching. Gray zone competition is the battlefield of the future. Countries that cannot match U.S. naval power will keep turning to tactics that create friction without triggering full-scale war. That means harassing supply lines, pushing rules of engagement to the limit, and generating political headlines that undermine confidence in maritime security. These small but calculated moves are designed not to defeat the U.S. militarily, but to erode trust, complicate responses, and influence global perception. Doctrine, too, must adapt to this reality. Every Navy involved in contested regions will study incidents like this closely. When should a commander escalate force? And when does restraint carry greater long-term value? These decisions are not simply tactical. They shape the credibility of a Navy's posture in the nation it represents. A measured response that balances deterrence with discipline can often be more powerful than an aggressive one that risks political fallout. Perhaps most importantly, information dominance now defines strategic success. The Seahawk's ability to record imagery, capture timestamps, and preserve communication transcripts is as critical as carrying advanced weapons. These records provide irrefutable evidence in the court of international opinion, strengthening legal cases and shaping narratives. In the end, control of information is as decisive as control of the seas because it determines who the world believes and whose actions carry legitimacy. This was a close call turned into a diplomatic victory because of discipline, documentation, and deterrent posture. But it raises a hard question. Should the U.S. ever respond more aggressively to maritime posturing? Or is measured restraint the smarter long game? Drop your opinion below. Be specific. What rules would you change, if any? If this breakdown helped you understand the subtle chess of naval encounters, like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth maritime analysis.